evening, cult members, and welcome to Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Janice.
And welcome to our spoiler discussion reaction review of Loki season 2, episode 6. This one called Glorious Purpose Again. No, just Glorious Purpose. Holy World Tree.
The Tree of Life.
The Tree of Life. Okay. We are wearing our Marvel stuff because we went and saw the Marvels and had a great time. No spoilers. Then we came home and had our heart ripped out by Loki. Should have done that in reverse. So we were just talking about this. Oh, by the way, thank you, SAG, for fighting the good fight and doing all that and getting that done. And the producers are douchebags. It shouldn't have taken that long. It's ridiculous it took this long. 3/4 of a year has been lost because of this stupid strike. And now Disney's like, oh, we have to change the schedule around because we haven't been able to film for almost a year. I'm in a mood about that right now. We were just talking about this, about the Loki series. And it feels like they had one overall story that they wanted to tell and 2 6-episode story arcs.
Yeah.
And everything is directly connected to everything else within this story, adding the Kang variant throughout this process.
Right.
And this episode was the Groundhog Day episode.
Yeah.
Of Loki trying to do everything in his power to fix the loom.
Right. I mean, he went back over centuries, basically, redoing it over and over and over again, learning what he needed to learn to be able to do it all himself, engineer it all himself. Try to stop Sylvie from killing Kang, which I thought ultimately Loki was going to end up having to kill her.
Yeah.
And he did get to that point, and then Sylvie was basically like, what's the worst that could happen if you just let it happen?
Yeah. And that's been her point of view the entire way.
Yeah.
Is that the TVA was constructed to take everybody's choice away. And He Who Remains' point of view has always been, if we give you the choice, a war is coming.
Right.
And so to save you from the lesser of two weevils, and that's a deep cut. So to do that, I'm going to create one sacred timeline,
right,
and make it so that the other versions of me can't come in,
right,
and start the universal war and the time war. I guess there's the variant war. There's a lot of different things that be going on there. But the idea that Loki has to make this ultimate choice, do I kill the person I love to save everyone, to save the sacred timeline, or do I take on the burden of being the person at the end of time weaving the story, but I am alone?
Right.
And he talked about, in, what was it, episode 4, when he went to Sylvie in Oklahoma on the branch timeline, it said, I just want my friends back.
Yeah.
He was alone.
Yeah.
And he's always put himself alone. And then throughout the series, he's figured out that he is better off with friends and people that he loves.
Yeah.
And so now he has to make this choice. Do I kill the person I love to save everyone? Or do I or am I alone for the rest of time?
Yeah.
Or rest of whatever.
Being the keeper of all the timelines.
Yeah. And so it was just a really kind of like, I guess I'm still going to try to work out how I feel about all of it. But ultimately I really loved this series. I really loved what they did with the Loki series.
Yeah. And I I think I agree. I liked this episode a lot. I liked a lot about it. Um, it's just like kind of coming to grips with the end and what does that mean? I
Right.
mean, Tom Hiddleston himself has said, and I think we've mentioned this before, that he loves Loki. He loves playing Loki,
Yeah.
and he was the executive producer on this series
Yeah.
too. So, um, it's almost like Endgame. Like, is he dead? Is this it?
Right.
Because
Right.
it's Loki. Um, and w- and what does this mean for all the timelines? Like, what does this mean
Yeah.
for all the Kang variants? The real life drama that's going on with Jonathan Majors
Yeah.
and yeah. So
It's
where are we going forward with this?
it's there's some stuff that happened in Miss Marvel today too that I I could say that there's some connective tissue with what happened in Loki tonight, and it's not unlike Marvel to sit there and tag a bunch of things in the same story, and we don't know it until we get 3 or 4 stories down the road. So I don't want to spoil what happens in Miss Marvel, but they've been playing with the timelines and the multiple dimension.
Multiple dimensions. I almost
See,
said divisions
see,
too.
see. They've
Multi
been doing that since they
dimension.
started with What If. They started playing with that idea since What If,
Yeah.
and the multiverse with Multiverse of Madness and and No Way Home and like all that kind of different stuff. And we're Deadpool's going to deal with it too.
Yeah. I think where I'm kind of at with it is it almost feels like um if they have to kind of stop this multiverse storyline
Mm-hmm.
and pick up with some of the things that happened in Ms. Marvel, that this is a clean way to do that.
If they had to, yeah. And in we called it Miss Marvel in the Marvels,
In the
yeah,
Marvels, sorry,
yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah,
Marvels.
yeah. But um, they've been. I trust Kevin Feige to do what is right for both Marvel and the story. Marvel, as in Marvel Studios, the Marvel, the production company itself, and for the overall story. And so, but with this, but now that you've broken open the multiverse, and how do you rein that in and make it make sense for you know Susie Q and Jim Bob in Midwest Oklahoma
But
that don't really necessarily watch all the Marvel movies and all
yeah,
the Marvel
I
things?
mean, I don't feel like it's the same thing that now though, because before it was the sacred timeline and there were all these branches. So it visually, and maybe this is not how it is in the story, but for me, visually, it made it you could almost cross across those different
Yeah,
timelines because they were all branches of the same,
yeah,
you
and they were
know,
so close to each other.
tree,
Yeah,
right? And but now it's a bunch of branches
yeah,
just
yeah,
all grouped together,
yeah,
not off of any singular main branch.
yeah.
So everybody's
You could
just
cross. It's America Chavez can cross over the
yeah,
dimensions.
and
So
there
that's
are some I guess out there that can do that, but
yeah,
it's almost like uh is it the string theory that they talk about how there can be millions of timelines basically running alongside each other
right,
and in a lot of ways almost mirroring each other, but there's slight differences, or and the farther you go
right,
the bigger
right,
the differences. So it almost feels like that now instead of branches of a tree.
right.
It's a
It's
bunch of
a
lines
bunch of lines
running.
instead of having one rope of the sacred timeline. You have instead of having one rope, it's everything's kind of going together. It's cables and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So Yeah.
The 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 idea that one person has to make this ultimate decision is I, I it's sitting with me strangely because I guess the idea that he didn't go to his friends and say, "What should I do?" I mean, he kind of does. He goes to Mobius. I do it every time. He goes to Mobius and says, "How do you deal with it? Like you're the ones doing all the pruning. You're the
Yeah.
ones killing people. And how do you deal with it?" And Mobius is just pretty much like scar tissue. You deal with scar tissue.
Yeah.
And you. I'm reading Iron Flame right now, and one of the main characters, Cartman, puts all of her stuff in a box, and she seals that box. It's the same concept. It's the same idea of you just cart
Compartmentalize.
that's the word I'm trying to say, but I'm really tired, and so it trying to it's doing that, and he goes to Sylvie too, and Sylvie is like you were saying, like what's the worst that's going to happen,
Right.
and so that idea of he did go to his friends, he did actually work it out, so I guess I'm okay with it. I just I'm struggling with it because I want so much more with Loki. I want more time with Loki
Right.
that I don't want to be stuck holding the branches
Yeah.
of this tree.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. You're like Endgame. You're like, wait, he can't be dead.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
can't really be dead. It's
yeah,
Loki, but it does have some, Norse symmetry that that's part of the, Loki, Thor, that whole um their stories, their old gods, whatever. That there is a tree of life,
yeah,
so it kind of has some symmetry with that. It's just I just find it's it's interesting that where do they most of the Marvel stories seem to, I won't say wrap up, but at least kind of feed into the next thing.
yeah,
You're like, oh, okay, that end credit, mid credit scene,
yeah,
whatever, feeds into the movie we're gonna see in you know 2 or 3 movies down the line, and this felt final.
yeah. And I think that's where I'm struggling with it. I'm not a big it's weird. I don't like endings. Like it's not that I don't like endings. I don't like um I don't like the idea that um uh I don't like endings. I'm trying to think of some other way of saying that, but it's I don't like the way I feel when I know there's no more of something coming.
Yeah, something
It,
you like.
it's something I
Yeah,
like,
yeah. It's
and
like watching a show. Like you'll binge a show. We felt like this with Stranger Things. Like we'll binge the whole thing, and then after 2 or 3 seasons or whatever, and then afterwards you're like, I want to go back. I
yeah,
miss I
yeah,
miss those people. I
yeah.
miss what was going on in their lives and all
The
that.
the uh there was a show that we watched. We watched the first 2 seasons. I can't remember what it was. We watched the first 2 seasons, and then they canceled it after the third season, and we hadn't gotten to the third season yet. And I'm like, well, I don't even want to watch it now because
It's just it's
I
over.
know there's it's going to be end on some cliffhanger that we're never going to get a resolution because the producers decided that we're not going to spend $7 over here, so we spend $4 over there. It's like it's just so I'm struggling with the idea this is a finale for this character because there's other things that I want. I would love to see the reaction of Thor that Loki is still alive.
Yeah,
I would love to see,
and this is what he did.
and this is what he turned ultimate good and is giving everyone a chance to do their
Yeah,
own stories and I want to see I want to see how Valkyrie would treat him considering all the things that she went with him like
yeah,
I would love to see I would love to see that I would love to have that like let's have the heart to heart conversation with the original six Avengers and Loki and where everybody is now. I would love to see that conversation
yeah.
because none of the original 6 saw his redemption story.
Right.
He was dead by the time the Battle of Earth happened.
Yeah.
And so it's stuff like that that's going through my head where we're never going to get that.
Yeah.
Or
Or are we?
because, you know, spoiler alert, the MCU is based off of comics. And comics bring back characters all the time.
Yeah.
Like, all the time.
Yeah.
In fact, the story that we got with this series is about Loki coming back from the dead and realizing that he wants to be good. And he ends up being the god of stories instead of the god of mischief.
Yeah.
And that's from the comics. And so we get President Loki because there's, variants and all that stuff that's going on.
Yeah. I just don't see this. I mean, I think for this Loki, we're done.
I feel like it's tear.
Yep.
A couple things that I do want to talk about. I'm not saying anything that's not a surprise here. Tom Hiddleston is freaking amazing.
I know.
Multiple times in this series, but especially in this episode, he just conveys the sorrow that he has, the weight of everything on his face, and just what he does with that is just amazing. As much as we didn't get, although we got some Sylvie, she was more of a second level character because we got more of what Mobius and Obi and we got 3 episodes with Victor, and so it's not she is a vital part of the story, but she's not nearly as involved in the story this year outside.
Yeah, she was almost the story in the last season.
And Owen Wilson is just the scene of him going back to look on himself and his kids, and Sylvie showing up and kind of like them, like, okay, what are you gonna do now? And like, what are you gonna do now?
Yeah.
And I just him standing there, like, I'm just gonna let time pass.
Yeah.
He says,
yeah,
it's just I love actors who can convey emotional change in their face without dialogue.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people could do emotional change with their words and their body movements and stuff like that. But actors who can physically, you can tell exactly where their mind is and the thought process change in their head from what they're saying with their face and nothing else. And Owen Wilson did it in this episode. And again, breaks my heart. I want more with this character. Get that man a freaking Sea-Doo.
I had so many questions though, because like, how did they? I guess they used the temp pads. I guess to go to the different timelines, and he left the TVA. So where's he gonna go?
Right.
He doesn't already exist. I had questions. I'm like, where's
he's gonna be in Thunderbolts? I don't know. I don't know at this point
because now there's an extra Mobius.
Yeah, there's an extra Mobius, and they're rebuilding. They're rebuilding the TVA in its newest form, and there's a lot more people at the table.
Everybody was in a way better mood.
They
had the posters instead of
grow the timeline.
Yeah, instead of protect the timeline, now it was, we all grow together or whatever, and there's water in the tree, and there was a new edition of the TVA handbook. And then the one scene where Ravonna doesn't bring young Timely the handbook. Like he's pouring the candles, and then he looks back like he expected something to happen, and it didn't.
Yeah.
And then Ravonna is now stuck at the end of time with the smoke monster thing.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the name of that was.
It's the Void, and it's Goliath.
Goliath. Yeah.
It's something like that.
Yeah, I think it's Goliath. Which that was interesting. Like they show her like looking afraid and then not.
So I'm trying to remember. There's a lot of stuff going through my head right now. I think she was the leader of the army, and her and He Who Remains has a conversation. He sends her back to the TVA and then tells Miss Minutes to wipe everybody's memory.
Right.
I think in that conversation, I want to say that there was something that was said about stopping. Oh, no, no, no. It was He Who Remains last season who said I was able to control Goliath, and that allowed me to help me win the war. And so, if I'm going to put a bunch of red string together, if Ramona's the one who tamed Goliath, and then He Who Remains used her to use it to win the time war.
Yeah, but
I mean, it's not a big stretch, but she did not seem like she was over. She was scared at first, and then she didn't seem overly concerned.
No, she kind of had a smirk.
Yeah.
But if he wiped her memory, which he said he did, he wiped everybody's memory, then why? I don't know how she would.
That would explain the initial. If she doesn't remember Goliath, if her initial reaction to the fear, and then realization that no, I've done this before, like something pops in her head, like something
maybe
triggered.
Oh.
I might be stretching because I'm looking for things to hopefully bring in. Like this is actually going to be a thing. Trying to think if there was anything else. I there's a lot. I want to rewatch the series. We talked about this as soon as we get done with the last episode or whatever. But I want to sit down and rewatch the series and kind of get an idea of like probably do it all in one sitting. It's only 6 episodes, and I think this one was 55 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, I think I'd want to watch season 1 and season 2 all together, like maybe on a Sunday, just watch the whole thing because you find so much more. Obviously, on multiple watchings, but then to put them all together instead of every week, and then a big year and a half, whatever in between.
Yeah.
So when you go watch them all together, you're like, oh, they said that in 2 episodes ago, which was an hour ago,
Right.
not
Right.
3 weeks ago.
I was just thinking we watched Fast 10 since we saw it in the theaters. We love the Fast series. Don't add us.
Guilty pleasure.
Unless you want to watch it with geek out over it with us. There's a scene in that movie that happens in the first 3 minutes that explains the entire plot, and it's hidden in plain sight.
Yeah.
And it's like, now that I've rewatched, now that I know what happens, I go back and rewatch it. I'm like, oh, well, that's just good storytelling right there. and I feel like this is going to be one of those things where they set up some stuff in the first few episodes, because even when Loki time slips back to his initial intake conversation with Mobius, there's some parallels and things I think that would be a trigger for us now in that conversation.
Yeah.
It is now almost 11:30, and I still have to edit. So, let us know what you thought of this series. We really, really loved it. I'm tired of the conversation that Marvel is down. You guys just haven't had anything to talk about for 2 months, for 8 months, and both things that we watched today from the MCU was really good.
Yep.
We have discussed. We discussed it on the way home. We may do a breakdown discussion every of the whatever 6 episodes of Echo that we're getting, but they're dropping it all at once, so it might just be a series review, which is totally fine too.
Yeah.
And now that the world is opened back up for a second time, we will be doing more trailer reactions and movie reviews and stuff like that. So,
yep, we have 2 movies coming up in the next 2 weeks.
And our Miss Marvel, or see, I did it again. The Marvels review is up on the channel right now, so you should like this channel, subscribe to it, and hit the bell for notifications. Follow us on all the social media stuff: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Links in the description. Oh, it's called X. Whatever. Links in the description down below. And until next time, cult members, I'm going to keep calling it Twitter because I'm dead naming it. Good afternoon, good evening, and I'm going to bed sleepy time night now.